since then.
Okay, so stream's back up now. I just brought it back up on mine.
Okay,
that was
so
a cool. We'll have to release that video. I really like that. That was a cool conversation.
Okay.
Everybody yell at Kevin for knocking out our stream.
All right, everybody, please let us know if you can see us and hear us in the chat. Sorry about that. Yeah, do let us know in the chat right now if you could see and hear us. I think Quinn Peterson even said that was a touchy subject. Yeah, probably. Seems to happen at interesting times. So I'm not seeing anything. Okay, a thumbs up from Karen. You guys can all hear us and see us. Oh, you know what? They're probably still finding the link.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna tweet it out real quick.
Okay.
It should have repopulated through Periscope too.
Yeah.
And we sent a tweet out with it. And it says take two, so it's, if you're looking, it's obvious. But do you want to pick back up where we were at, Dario, talking about municipal disobedience and local sovereignty?
Yes, I think that when we're talking about this issue, the steps that have to happen first is having communities build a closer relationship to actual say in what's happening in the communities. Because the leaders that they have aren't really representing them, and they're not really representing them because people have been cut off from democratic engagement. And so we need to address this issue of the democratic deficit. You're not going to get elected representatives, local law enforcement forces. You're not going to get these instrumentalities of your local government to genuinely represent you until the many barriers put in between your vote and their existence are removed. We've got racist voter ID laws prevailing in various parts of this country. We've got corporations flooding elections with their money because we're told the corporations are people. And I always tell people what that really means is when they say that is the corporations are more important than people. They're ranking them more important than people. And they're flooding our democracy with funds. So basically, to get to the point is we've got some democratic deficit issues to solve to make localities and their governments, state governments and the federal government better represent our values and better represent our say so before we can get to the point where we can depend and rely on them to advance those values. Because as you know, as I know, we got local police forces engaging in, complicit in, creating a genocide on our streets. And we expect them to be on our side when it comes to issues such as that. We're not there yet. We have a lot of building to do and a lot of community control over things like policing and law enforcement to take into our hands.
So we did have some questions from viewers. This one is coming from Propaganda Quinn. He is asking, how can the Green Party work across borders with other Greens to make a bigger network? Seems like liberals and conservatives have no problem making global coalitions.
It's an excellent question. You know, I'm very much about that, making those global connections. Our campaign has gone global. I was speaking with the Green Party of Quebec some months ago. I gave a speech there about the things happening here and the connections between our two countries and the effort to work together on issues we need to work together on, such as climate change. We got to save this planet together. And I was very emboldened by the positive response that I got there. I was in Palestine, in Israel, Palestine, number of months ago, and not to speak with the local Green Party there, which doesn't really have the perspective we would like on Palestine. I'm very much pro-BDS and anti-occupation, but I spoke with the campaign manager of what was at the time a joint list of two predominantly Palestinian Israeli parties that were running in that Israeli election. We talked about the things, the struggles that we have in common, the struggles that affect them. So we've been actively engaging in building those bridges. And the basis for doing so, it's got to be on common values and shared values. And I'm very open to doing that, of course, with Green parties all across the world, but we need to work with whatever partners are willing to advance those values so that we can achieve progress. There's so much to do nationally, and I think the basis should be on shared values, whether your party carries the name Green or not. And our campaign's advancing
So you brought up the issues of voter ID laws and voter registration problems and things like that. There's an organization called Judicial Watch. Some people know who it is, some people don't. They're a Freedom of Information Act organization. They sue the government to get information and things like that. They recently won a lawsuit that forced multiple states, I think maybe every state, not positive, and I don't want to be wrong, but some states, specifically California and Ohio, to send out postcards to everyone in the mail.
Yes.
And you have to respond to the postcard in order to stay registered as a voter, or you get removed from the voter rolls. And this is a really touchy subject across political spectrums because some people see it as a way to shore up the voting rolls to secure that people who are voting are the actual people they say they are, and other people say that it's a situation that's being used to target communities of color.
It is.
So I was just wondering, because this is separate from interstate cross-check, which is another horrible system, what you thought about these lawsuits that Judicial Watch won that forced these re-registration campaigns.
I think I think any effort towards challenging these ongoing processes that are abusive, that are racist at their core and are anti-democratic, I think any effort towards that is a good thing. I've seen the effects of this in Ohio. I've seen the effects of the attempts on the part of Secretary of State's office, Frank LaRose, to purge the rolls. That's not the word they like to use or like to hear, but that's what they're doing. They're attempting to purge the rolls. And when you ask them about it, they always say, we send out these postcards, we send out notices, we send out this, we send out that. Look, you have a right to vote. You register to vote. You should stay registered to vote. Unless they have some evidence to the effect that you are no longer eligible, unless they have some evidence to the effect that there's some fraud going on. This whole effort to purge the rolls is drummed up as an effort that those who are interested in purging minority voters off the rolls hope to profit off of. The scare that they've put out there over voter fraud, the instances of it they are so minuscule that the effects of what they're doing far outstrip them. The bouncing of people off the rolls, the disenfranchising of people off the rolls, far outstrips any of those efforts. So anything we have at our disposal to fight that legislatively, in terms of lawsuits, we need to do that because they're pernicious. We know what their goal is, to bounce minorities off the rolls.
All right, so do we have any more questions from the co-hosts? Do we have any questions from our guests? Guys, do let us know if you have questions for Dario. Let us know in the chat what you would like us to ask him. Everybody seems to be really happy with your statement on Julian Assange and your outward support for him. It is all too often that politicians, of course, are very willing to kind of not address the issue, I guess, and that's putting it in a nice way, besides just a select few: Tulsi Gabbard, Adam Kokesh, Ian Schlackman, you now as well. But I felt like I was kind of stealing Dak Rulo's thunder. I'm like, we should have had him on tonight to ask. One of our
It's also really
friends,
refreshing because you've educated yourself on this and you know the facts of the case, and you're not swayed by any mainstream media smears or narratives on Julian Assange. You are kind of a breath of fresh air to speak to because you're on the same level that we are. You know what's actually happening, and the wool can't be pulled over your eyes. So that's really refreshing for a politician to be up to speed on this case.
yeah, absolutely.
And I just really want to thank you for coming on because we try to frame the political process like it is, to where there is one political party and then there is the people fighting back against them. So some people, for better or worse, think Tulsi Gabbard is championing for the people, which good on them. She may or may not be. That's not my call to make. But we like to frame it here where she's necessarily the furthest right candidate that could even possibly be considered in the political spectrum. So I really appreciate you coming on and diving into such complex topics with such elegance. It's really, to me, like a breath of fresh air, and why I love the Green Party so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other questions coming from
I am not seeing any questions in here, but I do want you to have the opportunity before you head out. And of course, you are welcome to stick with us. We are going to touch on one of our own campaigns that we have going on to discuss more about that and our goals for the evening. But if you would like to just provide some final statements, some final thoughts, and mention some things that you maybe didn't have an opportunity to tonight before you do head out. And like I said, you are welcome to stay. And on behalf of me and my three co-hosts, thank you so much for joining us. Like Christy was saying, your perspective is very refreshing to come from a politician. You know the facts, and you're very well versed on Julian's case, and that is something that we love to see. And I'm very happy that you're willing to speak out in favor of Julian Assange. So thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me. And I think what is at stake here, just to close, what's at stake here is the value that we place on democracy. Does it have meaning to us? If it genuinely has meaning to us as individuals, as a country, as human beings, this idea of human beings having voice, having choice, having say over their destinies and over their futures, then we need to be concerned about what's happening to Assange. We need to speak out against it. And we also need to recognize the larger system, the wider abuses of which this is just a part. You mentioned at the beginning, Susie Dawson. And it's interesting, in her recent statements, she talked about issues relating to sovereignty in her home country of New Zealand. She's noted that until sovereignty is regained, which would mean total military intelligence and independence from the US, then our prime minister is nothing but a middle manager. Think about that. Think about that perspective on the governance of her country. The perspective that could be shared by people living in many countries across the world whose democracies have been preempted by US engagement and by US imperialism. I'm sure people in Bolivia know that and see that very well, and the bloody effects of that. We have been such a negative force around the world, including this effort through Assange to negatively impact the international human value and respect for freedom of the press. And so what we're advancing, the Green Party in this campaign is advancing, is something that should be very simple. The United States needs to be a positive influence and leader in the world for the universal human values we should all share. This includes freedom of the press, but it also includes democracy everywhere in the world, not just control and say for the few at the upper echelons of society in this one country that people sometimes call leading the free world, but for everyone all over the world, with countries standing shoulder to shoulder as equals. That's what we're advancing, and that's what we're representing. And anyone who's interested in that and supporting that, because we need all the support that we can get, I encourage you to become a part of my campaign. I encourage you to learn more at dariohunter.com. And I also encourage you, although I think money needs to be taken out of politics, unfortunately, we aren't in that system yet. And so we do need support, and you can learn more about how you can support us through your volunteerism, through your contributions, also at dariohunter.com. And so I once again, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. That's Dario Hunter. And again, you can learn more about him and his campaign at dariohunter.com. All right. Thank you so much. So we are going to be moving on. Before we do head to the news portion of the evening, we do want to talk about our goals for February. So we did set up a GoFundMe page. And we are, of course, Steve and I are seeking to go to London to actually cover the full extradition hearing for you guys, because we know, of course, that the corporate media is going to skew that message, and we want to be there to bring you guys the facts of this case, and we want to be there to also live stream what's happening and keep you up to date and let you know, minute by minute, hour by hour, what is taking place inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom. Of course, our chances of getting inside the courtroom are quite low. However, as soon as we learn what's happening, you will know from us. We will be live streaming it. We will make probably some videos about it as well. To keep you guys informed, we'll be tweeting, we'll be in communication with our other two co-hosts, Christy Doff and Andrew Smith. the two of them intend on going to DC to hold a series of protests to bring awareness to Julian's case. And we do need help to make this happen. Of course, this is an expensive endeavor, but any amount of contribution is extremely helpful for us to make this happen. And we also plan on releasing a very specific public plan on December 1st for you guys. But in order for us to be able to do all of these things and ensure that this is actually going to happen, we do need your help if you can help us. So our goal for the evening was we were looking to potentially raise $250 tonight on our GoFundMe, and one of my co-hosts will be able to put that in the chat for you guys. And we just need to really speed up this process. Now, if you cannot donate, that is completely understandable, but sharing the link and spreading it on social media is extremely beneficial and very helpful for us. So I will open it up to my co-host to provide some additional comments on why we are doing this and the importance of us being in DC and being in London.
Yeah, so with the plan for DC, more or less what we're trying to do is have two separate initiatives. The public plan, which is rallies, actions planned out specifically every day, starting with a meet and greet in a specific area that we plan on interacting with, whether it's a march, whether it's some type of interruption or a live vigil, something like that. We'll have something like that planned every day from February 4th through the end of the trial on Friday.
February 24th.
February 24th, I'm sorry. And so that's something that we're going to be bringing out here on December 1st. But one of the things too is we're going to try to do what I'm going to call the whisper campaign, which is using encrypted messaging to more or less make a plan behind the scenes that is in addition to what our public plan is. And it might just be fun. I'm going to try to work with people on an individual level to help them do basically what they can with the time and money that they have and that they're comfortable with doing. The plan is 100% nonviolence through the whole thing, but we can't control what the state does to us. So I just think that's kind of where DC's at and kind of what we're looking at. We have a great Discord channel set up if you're interested in getting involved in planning it.
Yeah, so we really felt that as this past year has gone on and more cities in America are starting to gather and hold solidarity actions, vigils, rallies, marches, we really wanted to pursue that more and bring everybody, as many people as we can, together during the trial in DC. So if you are in the US or you're in Canada or Mexico and you can make it to DC, that would be amazing to see you there. If not, please hold actions in your own cities during this time, during the trial. The reason we decided to focus on DC was because we really want to go to these government buildings and government agencies that are pursuing Assange, that are pursuing WikiLeaks, and are responsible for this persecution. We really want to take action there to show a united front that the American people do not support this.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you more or less said all of it. It's just, it's really important to know how few outlets are willing to cover Julian Assange accurately. And on top of that, when you see coverage of like a rally outside of Belmarsh or Westminster, wherever, it's Gordon Dimmick, roughly maybe one of the Australian channels, and like that's fucking it. That's the whole thing. And if a US media outlet reports on Julian Assange, more often than not, it is CIA manufactured talking points. There's not a shred of accuracy in it, and we would like to change that. We would at least like to be the exception to that rule, especially in terms of covering the extradition hearing, and certainly from the hearing itself. Like I don't see I don't see anybody else trying to do this. For one, I don't see our favorite people in left or independent or libertarian media going, hey, we're going to be on top of this. We're going to be there in London. We're going to be, you know, first on the scene with this information for you. It's like for people who have other shit going on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
We
And-
don't
so
make any
Steve
money
and I-
doing this. This isn't our full-time job. That's why
Yeah.
we're asking for help. We really just need this money to get us there for plane tickets, for the transportation around the cities, for lodging. And if we have any extra for food, and then if we have any extra after that, it's going to be going towards actions, whether it's posters or flyers or helping Steve and Taylor rent video equipment so they don't have to travel with stuff. Really, this is going to be a very bare bones operation, but we would really like to crowdsource and see if we can get our fans, our viewers to help us out. And because we know you want to know what's going on. And now that the trial has moved to Belmarsh, it's going to be even harder to get solid coverage. I mean, getting into the courtroom is going to be very, very difficult. But now that it's outside of London, now it's a little bit less accessible. And I have to wonder if, you know, some news agencies will just decide not to go and just carry the BBC, you know, generic talking points through that week.
And
You
I
know,
want to thank Sherry Clayton, who just donated to us. Thank you so much, Sherry. We're very grateful and we appreciate that. Sherry's been on the vigils and she's a very vocal supporter of Julian Assange. And thank you so much. Again, we all really appreciate that. And we all really appreciate your videos you made of us. We're going to have to show our viewers because it's so cute. It's so funny. We were all cracking up when we saw it. So
We
again,
do need to
thank you
show
so
the
much for
baby
supporting us.
animals. Maybe Steve can pull that up so we can
I
show
don't
the
know
baby.
where it is. I don't.
Oh.
I think that got sent to the ActionForAssange Twitter DM.
Yeah, I think it's in a Twitter message.
So
Hold
while
on.
we pull it up to talk for a minute, you brought it up, but I kind of want to make sure we emphasize this point. We're not a legal organization. We're not a nonprofit organization. We're not for profit. We're not an organization. We're for people that give a fuck. And we're for people that have full-time jobs, kids, full-time lives. So what we're going to do just to show how the money's being used, we'll just set up a literal transparent spreadsheet where we can put the receipts for transactions and things like that in there, just so that way we can be as public as possible as we're going through this process. Because I think transparency is a big thing that sets us apart from everybody else. So I just want to make sure that we can follow through with that on our end and show where the actual money is being spent, even if we don't necessarily reach our $4,800 goal, just the money that we do use through that to get Stephen Taylor to London and to get us to DC. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that we'll document everything for everyone to look at to see how it gets used.
So we have the video and one of you guys, can you pull that up? It's so cute. It's so funny. Quinn just said, God, those are great animals for Assange. Yeah, that's cute. But yeah, you guys are going to like this video. It is funny. Again, thank you so much, Sherry. But yeah, like Andrew was saying, we are going to be transparent about what we're doing with these funds. And it's all going towards coverage for all of you. Are we able to pull that up?
Yeah, so our goal tonight was to raise $250. So if you've been thinking about donating, please do share it on social media right now. If you cannot donate, we know not everybody has the means to give us extra money. So yeah, we're just going to make small incremental goals, and we're going to do what we can with what we get. And we've got some ideas of how we can stretch money and make things work. And yeah, like we said, we'll be very transparent with it.
It's as exciting as it is terrifying to realize that we're the new fourth estate.
I've almost got this thing, by the way. Hang on.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any, I mean, besides Gordon, who is there, anybody else who's saying they're going to go to London in February. Have you guys? Has anybody independent media wise made that proclamation?
Not publicly.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there's some people thinking
Maybe
about
there's
it. I know
there's some people thinking about it, but it's
I
not
hope we
public yet.
can fucking inspire the people to think
Yeah,
about it.
if we can get
we
there
can,
and we can do this, why
Yeah.
can't anybody else? Definitely.
right. And I really hope that that's what we can do, is show content creators, like, fucking do this. Like, people want to see it. Like, people are there for this.
Yeah. And of
So,
course, Steve and I, when we're there, I mean, we're going to be absolutely connecting with Gordon Dimmick and other activists when we're there. So, you know, it's a really cool way to see maybe some of the people you really enjoy watching actually work together and come up with some really cool content and informative, factual content for all of you guys. And Christy and Steve, of course, are going to be with many people in the United States, specifically activists, and perhaps even some really big name people and vocal supporters of Julian Assange. So the more help we get with this, the better this can really be. So again, we are very grateful.
and again, if you want to see people on this vigil or see people involved with our protests in London or DC, and hopefully we can get sister protests sparked all around the world on the same day and same time, but contact people, ask
Okay,
them,
I
hey,
have,
get involved in this. So you said you have it, Steve?
yeah.
Cool.
And here we go. Oh.
Maybe we should explain where this came from.
Let's play it one more time while we explain.
I think we should open the vigil with that every time. I'm just saying.
It's pretty adorable. Very
And
cute.
stop share.
Thank you, Sherry, so
Yeah,
much.
thanks, Jerry.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it came from Steve talking about baby otters being cute one time, and then it just kind of turned into its own meme of making Steve into a baby otter, and then she decided to do it to all of us.
I
Yeah,
love the duck.
Oh, baby
Like, Taylor the duck just cracks me up.
yeah, with the headphones.
Andrew the panda.
Mhm.
Are there any last thoughts that we want to, mention about the GoFundMe? Again, our goal for this evening is $250. We would really like to make that. Again, like Christy was saying, we do want to set these incremental goals for each vigil. That way we can keep people reminded that we are intending on going to London and going to DC to cover this, and we need your help. So again, thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the news portion of the vigil?
I guess the only thing that I could think of would be if you can't personally contribute, but you think it's a worthwhile cause, share the crap out of the link. You
Yeah.
know, and hopefully you have some like-minded friends who are in that position. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. All right. So we do have some news that we do want to touch on. Like we were saying a few weeks ago, anytime WikiLeaks published any documents, we were absolutely going to cover them on the vigils, of course. Well, WikiLeaks continues to impress us and just published an email related to a doctored and manipulated OPCW report that was in relation to a alleged chemical weapons attack in Douma, Syria, that took place on April 7th of 2018. And basically, Steve, I know you talked about this on your show with Gordon Dimmick. For people who maybe aren't familiar with this, do you want to maybe touch on some of the history of this leak? Because I know there is sort of a backstory to it, and providing that context for our audience will help them better understand the significance of this leak.
Sure. So in 2018, there was a chemical weapons attack on Douma, Syria, that immediately, without any confirmation whatsoever, Bashar al-Assad was blamed for the attack. He gassed his own people. This is unconscionable. How could he do this? And that's a fantastic question. How could he do this? Why would someone who is winning his particular war against US-backed moderate rebels? We all know what moderate rebels means, right? It means CIA and US Special Forces trained, you know, mercs, basically, that we can con into killing their own people for our foreign policy. That's who moderate rebels are. CNN, I don't know if you guys remember this or not. CNN sent a reporter over there to go look at Douma, where this horrific chemical attack took place. And the CNN reporter was handed a backpack that was exposed to what they were calling chlorine gas. They said was a chlorine gas attack. And this reporter buries her face in the backpack, sniffing it to see if it smells like chlorine. I'm going to say that one more time. They handed her a backpack that was supposed to be poison, and she buried her head in it and sniffed it like someone handed her a jar of freshly cured cannabis, and that's how she went at it. So a lot of people at the time that we were familiar with, and Caitlin Johnstone immediately, Jimmy Dore picked it up. I'm pretty sure that regardless of how you feel about them, the Martins, Abby and Robbie both called it that Assad had nothing to do with this whatsoever. We, of course, along with the British and the Canadians, with the consent of the Australian government and the New Zealand government, the Five Eyes countries, counterattacked, and we dropped a lot of bombs on Syria as a result of this. And this is what the excuse was. So flash forward to this summer, when a document was leaked that drew a lot of contradictory evidence to the fact that, or to the narrative that this was a chemical chlorine gas attack by Bashar al-Assad. Then a couple of weeks ago, a second OPCW inspector came forward, or leaked I think it was an internal document that blew a hole in the narrative one more time. There were only a handful of people that were talking about it in terms of, hey, we told you about this. We tried to tell you about this. We were right with our suspicions over a year ago. We got confirmation once. This is twice. Now, just last Saturday, WikiLeaks comes out with, at the behest of another OPCW inspector. Let me pull this up. Confirming.
I was just going to say, this is also a great example of why redactions are almost never a good thing, and usually not for the protection of people, but really just to manipulate and control a certain message, but really to manipulate the meaning behind a particular document.
So, so the email that we're about to pull up on the screen, and I'll make it larger too, was sent by a member of the fact-finding mission to his superiors, where he expresses his gravest concern over the intentional bias introduced to a redacted version of the report he co-authored. The email points out that this was, I should probably back up a little bit. The redacted report seemed to reach the conclusion that the author released email outlines. I'm sorry, I'll just pull up the thing. Where to go? I'm sorry, I need to collapse this so I can see what I'm doing.
Are you looking for the document itself?
Yeah.
Scroll up a little bit. It's the next item up on the right-hand side.
There we go.
And then click, there's a link on the right that says download the internal OPCW email.pdf. Click that one and you can see it by, like, more clearly. Scroll down. Boom, live TV.
There we go.
There it is.
Anyone want to take a swing at reading this down?
Should we read through this? It's a little bit long, but basically the overall, well, the reason why this is so significant to begin with. So many of you that perhaps don't really know what the OPCW does or its significance, the reason why the doctoring of this particular report is so significant is because these OPCW reports are often used to justify military actions in countries. So the fact that this report in particular was being completely manipulated to make it appear as if a gas attack took place, when really maybe that's not exactly what happened, or a chemical weapons attack took place and perhaps that's not exactly what happened. That's really problematic because of the bigger implications that can result from that. Like I said,
Yeah.
these are
The
used to
redactions are
justify actions.
redactions are very conveniently placed to give a completely different picture of what this document, this email was portraying.
So I don't mind reading through it if you want me to give it a whack. I'm not the best orator, but
I mean, we can cut out some of the more pedantic bits.
well,
But
it's only a page. It's that top little bit and then the whole page on the next piece. So the first two paragraphs in particular, I'll just read through those and we'll see where we go from there. I wish to express, as a member of the FFM team that conducted the investigation into the alleged chemical attacks in Douma on April 7th, my gravest concern at the redacted version of the FFM report, which I understand was at the behest of the ODG. After reading the modified report, which incidentally no other team members who deployed to Douma had the opportunity to do, I was struck by how much it misrepresented the facts. Many of the facts and observations outlined in the full version are inextricably incorrect or interconnected, and by selectively omitting certain ones, an unintended bias has been introduced into the report, undermining its credibility. In some cases, some crucial facts have remained in the redacted version, have morphed into something quite different to what was originally drafted. If I may, I will outline some of these specific aspects to the redacted report that are particularly worrisome. The statement in paragraph 18.3 in the final conclusions, the team has sufficient evidence at this time to determine that chlorine or another reactive chlorine-containing chemical was likely released from cylinders, is highly misleading and not supported by facts. The evidence available at this moment is that some samples collected at locations 2 and 4 were in contact with one or more chemicals that contain a reactive chlorine atom. Such chemicals could include molecule chlorine, phosphogens, cryogen chlorine, hydrochloric acid, hydrogen chlorine, or sodium chloride, a major ingredient in household chlorine-based bleach. Purposefully singling out chlorine gas as one of the as the possibility is disingenuous. It is also worth noting that the term reactive chlorine containing chemical used in the redacted report is in fact inaccurate. It actually describes a reactive chlorine chemical that contains chlorine itself, the chlorine, not necessarily reactive, e.g. chlorophenol. The original report used the more accurate term, chemical containing reactive chlorine. So I think that in particular, amongst the other couple paragraphs, really stands out about the fact that this report was doctored to show a specific set of facts, what I believe the Trump administration called alternative facts.
So, and we can go back to the email here in a minute, but I mean, okay, so here's a whistleblower coming forward, you know, to say, that's multiple governments, or at least multiple news outlets of multiple governments, you know, running with this story that chlorine gas was used by Assad to gas his own people, and it was totally necessary to immediately drop bombs on that country. And the OPCW knew that they were doctoring the report. How many other people besides the top echelon of the OPCW were aware of that? Were they pressured to doctor the report? You know, was this something they were doing out of their own particular desire to see more warfare in Syria, or was there a directive? I would tend to think that there was a directive, but that's definitely something that is at least worth exploring, not actively trying to find out.
Yeah. Sorry, just was silent for a second. I think but I feel like there is so much, like the broader scope of this too, is that there is, of course, an element of US pressure, I believe UK and France as well, who were really the nature of this report was really in benefit to them militarily.
Well, I mean, you look at this in comparison to the WMDs with Iraq, you know, half a decade more ago, and we're seeing these things put out there as an excuse to go to war, to send troops, to have thousands of lives taken over doctored reports, redacted reports. And I mean, gosh, if you didn't think the intelligence agencies were lying to us to get us to war before, what more proof do you need? And then when you take it and you pull back even more, why wouldn't you support WikiLeaks? Why wouldn't you support people who are exposing this? Why wouldn't you support whistleblowers who are showing us the truth, that we don't have to go to war over some made up report or doctored report to make it look sway it one way or another? I think this speaks volumes on our media who currently runs with this. We currently have intelligence agents on our media 24/7 acting like news anchors, and we just expect everybody to open their mouths and be spoon-fed this stuff and just go to war willy-nilly. And it's really, when you take a step back, it's really alarming at what is happening in the world.
When John Brennan and Mike Pompeo are in full agreement, and Marco Rubio and Nancy Pelosi are in full agreement, you know you know that it's for no other reason than to expand the empire. It's I mean, these are people who are paid handsomely to publicly disagree with each other, but there is one thing that they will unite behind, and that is an illegal invasion for acquisition of natural resources.
And it's essentially not even a reunification because they've been reunified, but another assertion of like the fallen Anglo-American or the fallen Anglo British Empire of the old days, where they were the ones that divided up the Middle East, that determined the boundaries. They were the ones that were in charge of the country of Pakistan at one point in time before they broke from British power. So seeing this on a larger global political scale, all this is just a move to try to secure empire. You even see it now where Donald Trump says that we're going to sell the oil off in Syria and that he gets to pick who gets it. Like that's like, how is that any different than any other emperor in the world or any other king? That's not America. Like, I don't know how to put it any other way than that. But I just want to make sure that people are aware to not get caught up in a horse and pony show that is too, even if there's a lesser evil, like if that term can even exist, side, that they're not fighting for us. They're just fighting for control of the empire's steering wheel. So don't get distracted or disillusioned because people in a party that start with an R or a D don't do the things that you want them to do or don't get involved in the actual necessary change. So I think that that's important to throw out there because I don't expect to see Bernie Sanders release a statement about this. So
Yeah,
I
and
think it's
also,
important to throw that out there.
yeah, I mean, we often refer to it as the American Empire because that's what it is. So I think it's a fair term to use. I think it's an inaccurate descriptor. So we will be using the phrase American Empire because all of our country's actions suggest and indicate and prove that we are living in an American empire. In addition to what Andrew was saying too,
just it takes too long to
yeah,
say.
I want to get to the Snowden documents that talk about the politicians and basically. So in one of the Snowden documents, we know everything that Andrew said is true. We know that basically whoever is elected into office, based off of the Snowden documents, it is a fact that it really doesn't matter if it's a left-wing person or a right-wing person that gets elected into office, because in these documents, they even say that they do not care what that person's political affiliation is, because ultimately it will not impact the military agreements made between countries, and it will not impact or influence the military industrial complex. So I'm not laughing about anything that I'm talking about right now. I just saw a funny comment in our chat that only the co-host can see. I'll just say it. Steve told me bring slides next time, Hudak. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get that out because I think it's important that people.
She's trying to make an
know.
important point, and Steve's cracking jokes back here.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I did want to make that point though, because a lot of people, think it's a conspiracy theory. It's not. It is a fact. It's no longer up for debate. And also it's in the Snowden documents. So if you still are skeptical, go watch the Decipher You series on Susie 3D Susie 3D on YouTube to learn more about that. All right, Steve, go ahead.
That's an excellent series, by the way. If you're not familiar with it, it's Susie Dawson and Elizabeth Voss, and they go through a significant amount of an Edward Snowden document release. So check that out. Oh man, I don't know if I had something or I was going to take us back to the WikiLeaks email, the OPCW email.
So we talk a lot about Tulsi on this show, and one of the things that they use to smear against her is that she's met with Assad and
that she was skeptical of this.
Yeah, and so when will the Democrat Party or Democrat candidates apologize for repeatedly using this attack on her every time she tries to speak at the debates? Like, some people get upset that she doesn't talk enough about policies at the debates, but when you get maybe 5 minutes and 45 seconds total in 3 hours, you don't get a lot of time, and you're constantly dodging this attack, this smear of, you met with a dictator that gassed his own people. So, I mean, this scenario, not only is it being used to bring us to another war, but it's constantly being picked apart as ways to destroy other politicians over. It's just really disgusting, honestly.
And I couldn't agree with that more. Sorry. For all the shit that I give Tulsi and for the perspective that I try to bring about her, she does get shit on for absolutely no reason about this. This is something that literally, like, if you look back at the history of the gas attacks in Syria, they happen at the same time every year, which is the same time. It's like in May to June, I want to say that
That
this
is so
happened.
interesting.
Very
That is
like
Interesting.
That is
ridiculously
so
consistently.
interesting. That is so dumb. You think that they would coordinate better, and that's really sickening. But you think that people would
They'd be smarter than
pick
that.
up on this,
Right.
but they're paid
Yeah.
not to. So
No, it's on the calendar. They have like a Google thing that's like false flag in
This
Syria.
is just the best time of year to host a false flag. It's
Right.
warm.
Easter egg roll on the White House lawn next week.
Oh,
Bomb Syria after a false flag gas attack.
lovely.
It's
Yep.
Why mess with tradition? It's
And yeah, it's an American tradition.
And then all the QAnon followers say, "Oh, it's okay. It's only missiles."
are there still people that are diehard QAnon? Like, hasn't that just fallen apart under the weight of its own bullshit yet? Like,
I hope so.
I hope.
I
I
haven't
think
heard much of it.
I think it's died down some, but I
Yeah.
think the drops restarted or something, and I
Yeah.
still seen people talking about Julian Assange is in the U.S. under protection, and it doesn't quite die.
Yeah, see, I feel like it was, you're right. I feel like it has died down and it's not as vocal anymore.
It's an interesting propaganda effort. Like
Yeah.
it's probably the most dangerous propaganda effort ever
Yeah,
undertaken.
it
Like I'll
is.
give it that.
oh, I don't know about that, man. I
It's
think
subdued a lot of people. It has.
it's absolutely
It's
absolutely
it's dangerous in the fact that it's pacified so many
deactivated.
people. It's pacified a whole base of people for Julian Assange. It's pacified a whole base of people to accept whatever the Trump administration does as some holier than thou plan.
It pacified the most dangerous portion of the internet, which is the plan. That is the plan you're trusting, is to be fucking pacified while our country's looted. In some side news, since September, we've given billions of dollars to the banks. We've basically started a new stimulus program.
I've talked about this a couple of times now.
But just in case anyone's worried, we gave $134 billion to the repo market
Oh no, we gave
because,
more than that.
well, I meant like back in September. This is
Yeah.
just the most accurate number I had then. But it was because the short-term interest rates for overnight loans exceeded 10%, which that really concerns me. So I'm glad we gave them billions of dollars for absolutely negative money. So I just wanted to point that out so everyone knew that we were in another, what the fuck did he call it? Quantitative easing period.
Yeah, so to kind of touch on that a little bit, what they did is over a course of 3 weeks, they pumped a total in that 3 weeks, they pumped like 350 or 60 billion in. They were doing like $75 billion a day there for a little bit. The parallels to what happened about a decade ago, a little bit more than a decade ago, are just overwhelming. Like there was massive deregulation and massive retraction of oversight, and I'm not for an overregulated society. I'm not for a centralized government. Like that's not my thing. However, like every single time an administration turns a blind eye to Wall Street and the banks, we have a massive economic collapse. All that does is further consolidate the wealth. It does not benefit you or me or anyone that we know. That's the only thing that the manipulation of the market system in an unregulated area produces. That's it. Like
So
sociopaths are held to the highest standard in these professions is what you want to be when you grow up if you want to be effective at your job.
So you'll see a lot now, and this has started happening to me as, for lack of a better word, like a small business owner. I started getting calls for like short-term business loans and short-term loans in general. And that's a result specifically of the government dumping this billions upon billions of dollars into this market. This is enough money that we could have funded every American going to college for an extended period of time. Like the old adage of how you're going to pay for it, like how's all this shit going to happen? It's going to happen by us using our fucking tax dollars to pay for it instead of giving billions of fucking dollars to the people that are actually causing the problems.
Okay, so do we want to touch on more about this OPCW leak, or do we want to maybe move on to the letter that was published by these 65 doctors, or the Berlin event that took place earlier today?
You pick.
We can go back to the at least the conclusion of the email really quickly.
Yeah.
Just
Wrap
because
that
there's
up.
a couple of other things to point on that were called had a lot of us smeared as conspiracy theorists for saying, look, it said this in the first leak document, it said this in the second leak document. We have pictures, and based on the reporting that we saw, it contradicts the narrative entirely. So let me bring this back up real quick. The original report has extensive sections regarding the placement of the cylinders at both locations, as well as the relative damage caused to the impact points, compared to that caused to the cylinders suspected of being the sources of the toxic chemical. These sections are essentially absent from the redacted report. This information was important in assessing the likelihood of the presence of toxic chemicals versus the use of toxic chemicals. Now, that is incredibly significant, because if you're trying to prove that Bashar al-Assad gassed his own people, one of the things that you need in your report is what do you call evidence, I believe is what that word is. If it's essentially absent, because we're talking about where these things went off, where they apparently they found an unexploded one, or one that just had a puncture in it. And we only know that because of the leak, not because of the report. What that does is it allows them to claim that there was the presence of toxic chemicals in this location, specifically something chlorinated, without providing any proof that they were used in that location as a chemical attack. You can take an unexploded ordnance and then walk in with any type of, chlorinated substance and spray it around, and it'll show up as a presence of those toxic chemicals. That doesn't mean that they were used in an attack, but it was certainly spun to us that way.
And there were pictures that came out, I believe, that actually showed basically like the chemical canisters placed on a bed and shit like that. Like, if I remember that properly, I think there was also pictures that came out with those.
You're not wrong. That's right. That did happen. I forgot.
Yeah. And it literally showed like a place blown up with a fucking bomb that had like a little bomb placed nicely on the bed. Like, oh, this whole building got destroyed, but like, here's this one thing that's intact. Like, ho ho. It's bullshit.
So, yeah, I mean, this is really a valuable valuable information. Again, coming from WikiLeaks, this points to exactly why we need Julian Assange, why we need organizations like WikiLeaks. And before we do move on to the next topic to discuss, I think taking a step back and thinking about, okay, look at the material that WikiLeaks is publishing. It's a threat to the military industrial complex. It's a threat to the United States. It's a threat to some very, very powerful people and organizations. And then look at what they're doing to the person who helped create the foundation that allowed for this information to be made public. Look what they're doing to him. It shows what they don't want us to know, and it shows to the extent in which they do not want us to know and have information like this. So when you're reading these leaks, always keep that in mind. So that it's really indicative of how fearful they are of organizations like WikiLeaks and of Julian Assange. So I'm glad we were able to discuss that tonight, because I don't think it was touched on too heavily in, well, I don't think it was talked about at all in the corporate media. Or
But it was. That's what I wanted to.
Oh, Tucker
bring up.
Carlson talked about it.
Tucker.
Yeah, he's
Carlson.
consistently
That's right. I did see that.
Look, Tucker Carlson wore a bow tie until he was 35. And he was so savagely mocked for it by Jon Stewart on Crossfire that, like, Jon Stewart's performance on Crossfire that day essentially ended the show. The show was off the air within like less than 3 months. Tucker Carlson had made his career writing incredibly hawkish, short-sighted, mostly idiotic neocon dribble. But occasionally, like, instead of pulling that face where he looks like he got a surprise fisting at the dentist, you know the face. You do. Tucker's like question face. Instead of doing that, he'll say something worth hearing. All right. So he talked about this.
Oh,
He
that was a
went
hell of
into
an
decent detail for a Tucker Carlson segment, and then immediately fucked up. And he has a guest on, and he's talking to the guest, and he's like, they get into a heated argument, and it's about Ukraine and Russia, and the guest is like, well, are you telling me that you would support Russia over Ukraine? And he's like, yeah, I do. He doesn't say because the Obama administration are neo-Nazis in order to overthrow the current administration, take control of the state. And everyone under the sun with a goddamn blue check or a show or whatever, outside of, you know, independent media or what passes for it, ran with this Tucker Carlson loves Russia shit. And the fact that he covered the OPCW report was completely lost on damn near everyone. And then Kate Johnstone comes out and says, like, yo, look, you should, you know, maybe understand that this information got out on mainstream media, and like not just shit all over Tucker Carlson all day, every day. And I kind of agree with that, but holy shit, did she get kicked around for it. And look, dude, people who otherwise never would have known about a doctored OPCW report now know about it. That's helpful because it will lead them to more information in WikiLeaks. It will maybe open their mind a little bit about who Julian Assange is. It will maybe tempt them to not only explore WikiLeaks more, but to become activated within a growing community of people who really understand the situation that Julian Assange is in, being, slowly murdered in the Guantanamo Bay of the U.S. And on that, in Consortium News, I will pull it up now. There is an open letter to UK Home Secretary Priti Patel and Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott. Taylor, do you want to use your professional news person voice?
Is it really like that? I can't stand that.
It's so much better than any of ours.
It is.
I don't want to be that robot. I hate that. Okay. So now I'm going to be laughing through this.
So
All right.
this has been signed by, I believe, the number is up to 67 doctors from all over the world. It's an open letter. And it goes through some specific points of Assange's health, and a lot of things we knew or have been released. A few years back, he did release some of his health records through WikiLeaks for a little bit of transparency of what he was going through in the embassy. And so this open letter does address some of those. And really, I mean, it also gets into Nils Meltzer's review and it's not really a diagnosis, but his conclusion of there being psychological torture. But I'm willing to bet, and even before that, there's more things going on with Julian that haven't been made public. But just rereading some of these again, and I don't know if everybody's read this in the chat. I encourage you to read this letter and really read through all the things he's gone through in the last decade. Like the
Hold on,
first
hold up
one,
right there. Go back up a little bit. You keep talking, Christy. Just
This-
that.
first one, the upper right first premolar tooth. This happened in 2010 when he was in jail in the UK for those 10 days. He was eating and said there was some sort of metal shard in his food. So I mean, this man's been living with a crap.
Not just the once though. They're like frequent metal shavings.
Yeah. Can you imagine living with a cracked tooth for almost 10 years? Like, and the pain that he must be going through just from this one thing alone I would think would just drive you insane. And you think of all the things he was accomplishing in the embassy. He was writing books, he was doing talks and speeches all over the world, and he was dealing with just this one specific thing. Not to mention there are other pain issues he's had while in the embassy.
Yeah, and it says here too that he also was given a trauma and psychological exam, and his score was a 15. And once you score a 15 on this particular exam, it actually indicates that you have major depression. And this was back in 2015. And I think that is obviously something that we would expect, but looking at how much he has had to endure since then, and he's able to persevere through this, and also additionally, these health issues that he's been experiencing that haven't been addressed, I'm sure contributing to this depression. And then one of the statements that was made in this letter that I just want to read to you guys, that was really, I thought it was put so well for us to understand exactly his predicament. It says here, Mr. Assange is in an invidious position of having to decide between his physical health and the risk of being extradited to the United States. So he basically was in this mental state of having to determine, do I seek out medical care for these horrible issues that I am having to suffer from, that I shouldn't be having to suffer from? However, if I do so and I do, seek relief and medical attention that could help me, I'm facing an extradition to the United States that had to have been tormenting to deal with psychologically. And the fact that he was able to have to go through that, yet publish all of this great work that that many people oftentimes take for granted, the fact that he was able to persevere through that shows to his mental strength. I often think to myself, I don't know how he is able to get through all of this. But I think that his dedication to his work is a big element of that.
Definitely, because during this time in the embassy, and think about all the major leaks that WikiLeaks released at this time. This is a broad point of time where they were, the Vault 7, the DNC. I mean, there's so much came out, and it's really awesome to see WikiLeaks putting out leaks again, and we've been able to cover 2 of the recent ones. And here we're.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I believe that this group actually, Doctors for Assange, created a Twitter account, and I encourage everybody to please follow them. I believe their handle is just at Doctors, the number 4, Assange. Christy, I could see her verifying that for me right now. But follow them. I believe that many of the people that run that account, or at least have some sort of association with that account, were participants in this article. However, their names are not made public. Some, I believe, are made public, like his typical doctors that have been seeing him have been public about this, like Sean Love. And I think
Is there a way to get other doctors to sign on?
They can send an email, I believe, doctorsforassange@gmail.com, I believe is how they have asked them to reach out if they want to sign the letter. And yeah, the Twitter is Doctors for Assange. I'm putting it in the
That might actually be a cool thing, because I mean, a lot of people have doctors. Just to start a conversation with someone that's in a professional
Can you imagine
position.
going to the doctors and be like, will you sign this? They're going to be like,
you support
okay.
Julian Assange.
Yeah, that's
Apparently,
like
you've
doctor.
never been to a doctor's visit with me, because that's pretty much how like most of mine evolve. Like, oh, how are you? Good. How are you? What do you do for a living? Well, let me tell you.
Let me tell you about my show.
Right. Like, here's a card. Super excited.
Follow that account on Twitter. I believe they have been shadow banned, but
they were shadow banned almost immediately after the account popped up. So, and also certain Unity for J team members that were tweeting out this open letter and replying to different things with it were shadow banned very quickly. So it was very interesting. I think it was Monday morning.
Isn't it crazy how scared they are? Like, doesn't that ever amaze you that they like have to feel like they have to shadow ban some doctors, like 67 doctors, and they're like, holy fuck, we can't let anyone know about these doctors.
The press.
Right, like it's crazy, like how much power just something like that wields over such
There's
a
a
frail
movie
empire.
about how the some executives at Ford wanted to murder the guy who invented the windshield wiper.
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie, and it's a thing that happened, at the advent of windshield wipers. But like, they conspired to have this dude murdered for that. Coca-Cola and a number of other businesses have hired mercenaries to go and murder indigenous people who are trying to unionize after they outsource, and yeah, of course you're going to shadow ban Doctors for Assange. Of course you are. That's the least you're going to do. Now all of these doctors have an intelligence file. Now all of these doctors have at least one human that's looking into their lives to see if they can't maybe ruin it, because they took a stand and did the right fucking thing.
We just have to get more people. Like, that's literally what it has to become, is there has to be more people willing to stand up than lives that they can ruin. And then that forces them to change the way that they play the game. And that's something that encryption does, using
On a statistical level, there's more doctors than there are paid employees of intelligence firms.
and a portion of them are probably way better paid than most of the intelligence agents too. Just for the intelligence agents listening, like, go be a doctor.
Hey, Kevin, there's still time.
Kevin,
You
you
can,
can go back to school and be
Quit
a
your
doctor.
job, you can go to medical school, and then you can sign up and join doctors.
But long story short, try to get your doctors involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have, if you know doctors personally, that's another way to also reach out to them. If you maybe don't necessarily feel comfortable like reaching out to your own doctor. If you know
It could be an interesting postering campaign, using the free Assange posters and then adding in the doctors for Assange information to it, and hitting up posters and putting them up in and around doctors' offices, trying to raise specific awareness, because that's a place where people congregate, and just piggybacking off of it. So that might be an interesting idea.
But really, this is a segue into activist self-care. We really just want you to get checked up and see your doctor for your yearly checkup.
Just don't get a flu vaccine.
I don't know. Well, you know what? I'm going to type it up in the chat and not actually address it on here. It has something to do with something you tweeted out, Christy, that was really clever. We spoke about it earlier today.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to touch on that. If not, you don't have to, but just because it's an important time. But yeah, so this letter's out there. Do follow at doctors4Assange and keep up with their work. And also do look through this, letter. Of course, a lot of this information we already knew, but kind of looking at it all at once is really puts things into perspective. Now, we do want to touch on a related what I was mentioning earlier to Christy. We do want to touch on something that is related, and that is, yeah, I know, right? I'm addressing comments in the chat right now. Sorry. Okay, so Steve is going to pull this up. Christine Assange, Julian Assange's mother, recorded a message where she basically said, "Hi, I am Julian's mother," and not only was she thanking supporters, but her main point of this message was to call out imposter accounts that are pretending to be her. Unfortunately, this is something that she is having to experience, and it's extremely devastating to somebody, and psychologically, really, because they are pretending to be her, and many people are falling for this. So she then decided to release a message that was saying that this one particular account was not her, and they were posting some really insane things, to be honest, just ridiculous comments, and that was by design. But we do have that message up. We want to play it for you guys. It's a really sweet message. So here it is.
Dear supporters, it's Christine Assange here, Julian's mum. I'm making this voice recording and giving it to Susie Dawson to give to you. I've made the decision to take extended leave because of family illness, and so I've deactivated my account while I'm away from Twitter. You'll know it's me because you can compare my voice with my interview voice, which you can easily access on the internet. Unfortunately, while I've been away, another account has set up with the handle Assange Mrs. _ purporting to be me and trying to discredit my account, Assange Mrs. I would ask you to report this account and to report any other accounts trying to take advantage of my absence to divide the campaign and divide supporters and to discredit good supporters. Thank you so much for caring for my son. Bye-bye for now. Dear supporters, it's Christine.
Whoops. So that account, I believe, has since actually been, many people reported it. They followed what she was asking, people to do. And I believe that account has been taken down. Is that correct?
I I thought it had. I haven't checked it recently to know if it has. But I know many people are reporting it. It is clearly an imposter. It is not Christine Assange. Yeah, so unfortunately, Christine Assange has a lot of things going on. And if you followed this for a hot minute, you would realize that not only does she have everything that's happening to her son, she's said that herself and her husband are suffering health problems, and they live in an area in Australia where there are bushfires. They've had to, I believe, either evacuate or they are close to the evacuation zone. Internet is very spotty. And so a lot of activists, if they have to be away from their accounts, will deactivate it so that there will be no mass reporting, mass spamming. If they don't have secure internet where they feel like they can securely log in, they will deactivate because of that. So she did this a couple weeks ago, I believe. And in this time, we've started to see some imposter accounts pop up, which, all things considered, is a very cruel thing to do to a woman that is suffering immensely over what her son is going through and what is happening to her son. And not only were they trying to pretend to be her, but they were also trying to discredit her actual account. So yeah, there's unfortunately, I think as we get closer and closer to the extradition hearing, and as this progresses further on, we're going to start seeing a lot of really sickening things like this. And I think it's personally a new level of low when you go after the man's mother, but it's just me.
Yeah, and this is, like Christy was saying, that's what I was mentioning earlier. This is something that we're unfortunately probably going to be seeing. Don't fall for it, guys. Some people do. I don't understand why, and that's really where education becomes really important. Knowing the methods of these operatives, specifically JTRIG, I believe, is if you know how that works, and if you do not know how that works, do watch Susie Dawson's One versus 5i teach-ins, where she and psychologist Lissa Johnson talk about this in great depth for several episodes. They lay it all out, they explain it, so you know what to look for, and you know when something just isn't quite right, and you know to stay away from these people, because it's very convenient for them to want to be doing things like this when there really needs to be a lot of focus and a lot of energy on saving Julian Assange and on efforts to bring awareness to his case. Christy, I could see you wanting to say something.
Yeah, so I've tweeted a couple times about this. I'm not going to get into specifics or name names because I don't think they deserve that notoriety or attention. But we have spent a lot of time through Unity for J. We've spent a lot of time through the One versus 5i campaign, educating and explaining these methods. We've explained and talked about the things that Julian Assange has gone through the last decade and things that have been done to his family. We've talked about how other activists have been targeted. We've talked about infiltrators. We've talked about saboteurs. We have talked about how to know when you are dealing with somebody who is trying to get you to do something violent, non-peaceful, to get you to do something that doesn't feel quite right. So don't ignore that. Don't ignore all this education that we've integrated in our activism to help others identify these things. You know when people are being divisive, you know when people are trying to cause trouble. There are perfectly good times to raise concerns and discussions, but there's other times when things are escalating for Julian Assange, for WikiLeaks. They need the support, they need the solidarity, and people are taking advantage of that right now.
Yeah, so if you guys in the chat have questions for us, please do let us know. We're going to start to wrap it up here, but we do want to make some, announcements before we go ahead and do that. But like I said, please leave us comments, thoughts, and questions in the chat. Again, like we were mentioning earlier, we do intend on traveling to London and DC for the full extradition hearing in February of 2020. So we had a goal of making $250 tonight towards our GoFundMe campaign. A donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. And again, that would go towards accurate and fair and extensive coverage of the full extradition hearing, as well as meaningful protests and actions to take place in peaceful protests and actions to take place at significant areas in Washington, D.C., government buildings, etc. So that is where that is going towards. And we are very grateful for any donation. And if you cannot donate, that's completely understandable. Not everybody has the luxury of doing so. But what you can do to help us out is just continuously promote the link, the GoFundMe link, and just circulate it on social media. That's really helpful for us. So maybe somebody who does have the opportunity to donate and really values Julian Assange's extradition hearing being covered fairly can pitch in and help us out. That would mean so much to us. So thank you guys again so much for joining us this evening and for being willing to donate to our campaign or circulate that GoFundMe link. It's very helpful. Before we do go around, I want to open it up to my co-hosts. Do you guys have any last pieces of information or news that you want to touch on before we do go around? I don't believe so, and I'm going to check the chat and see if any of you guys have. Oh, Dak Rouleau said, get to sleep and enjoy your Thanksgiving, gang. You all deserve a break. Hoping Julian gets to enjoy dinner with his mother soon. Yes, so do we. That's a very sweet message, Dak. Thank you for supporting us. I did not forget to publish your work. I will do that. Had a busy past few days, but yeah, thank you for that comment. I don't see any more questions that are relative to Julian Assange right now. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'll close out first. Thank you guys so much. Are we going to go around and say what we're thankful for?
I think we should. I think it'd be a fun Thanksgiving thing.
So of course we're American, and so Thanksgiving is today for Andrew and I, and Christy and Steve, soon for them too. So I guess, because I'm gonna feel bad if I forget something. I am thankful for you three. Of course, I have to say that, and I really do mean that. I'm thankful for these vigils and that we all clicked and were able to create this together. We all have our unique personalities and unique areas of, or different skill sets in different areas that when we combine it all together, it really creates something great. And I'm so happy to be a part of this with all of you guys. I really am. And for you guys in the chat, we are all really we're friends with each other. Not all of us have met each other, but we are friends. We all support each other so much. We talk, I think, literally every day we're talking, and we've all really become friends, and I'm so grateful for you guys, and I care about all three of you so much. I really love you guys, and I love what we're doing, and I am grateful for those who support Julian Assange and Susie Dawson. I'm really grateful for her as well for mentoring me and helping me out and trusting in me to represent her and represent her campaign. I'm so grateful for her time and for her work and for her working with me to help me understand it in a greater depth. I'm so grateful for that. And so yes, I am grateful for all the viewers as well. I feel like I've said grateful 100 times, but that is it. And I will wrap it up and just say thank you guys once again. And please follow the 1 versus 5i campaign on Twitter at the number 1, the letters VS, the number 5, the letter I. I did have 2 interviews this week with Graham Elwood and Ron Placone. Do check those out for more information on the campaign and also how you can get involved. I talk about all of that there, and specifically more information about the 5 Eyes and why Susie is holding them to account. And also I talk about Susie and her work and its great value and why we need her and we need to fight for her. My name is Taylor Hudak, and you can follow me on Twitter at _Taylor Hudak. And this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be on Jason Burmas to talk about the 1 versus 5 Eye campaign and Susie Dawson, and just getting people to become more aware of her initiative in these efforts. All right, I'm done for now. Thank you guys so much, and happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, I think is it my turn? Yeah, okay. I am really grateful for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks for opening my eyes and my mind to what is really happening in the world. I am thankful that Unity for J came around to inspire me to become an activist and to feel like I could make a difference and I could join this fight. I had no idea the time when I joined Discord and volunteered to be on the Twitter team that I would end up being on YouTube. Like, that was the furthest thing from my mind. But I am so grateful for the 3 of you. You guys, I feel like we've all become best friends. We get, like Taylor said, we talk every day. I care so much about you. I love each and every one of you and what's going on with your life. And I'm so excited to talk to you every day. I'm so thankful for everybody that I've met virtually. I've not gotten to meet anybody that I work with during this Free Assange movement, and I can't wait to start meeting people this new year, especially when we go to DC. And yeah, I'm just thankful for everybody I talk to and meet and the friends I work with and amazing people that I learn from every single day doing this work. It's not a cause that's a happy cause, I guess. Sometimes it feels weird to be making these friendships and having a good time when we're talking about some really dark stuff. I mean, some really Caitlin Johnson had a really good tweet today about just how if you're not supporting Assange and what happens to him, we're just going to spiral out into it will change so much if Julian Assange dies or if he's brought here and charged. Yes, Propaganda, I met you. I think we met on live stream on WikiBees. I've met a lot of you on WikiBees in the chat. So yeah, I'm just really grateful to have this experience. I love coming on every week and doing this show with you guys. My name is Christy Doff. You can find me at Christy Doff on Twitter. This Friday, I will be on with Sophia on the MCSC network, that's Nico House's network, at 6 p.m. Central Time this Friday. And we are going to be talking about all things Assange. And so if you have any questions or topics about Julian Assange that you don't fully understand or want to know more about, please send them to me. We're compiling a list now, and I'm really excited to talk to her and just get to talk about one of my favorite subjects. So yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
So I guess the biggest and most important thing for me to be thankful for, like in the course of these vigils and overall, is the support system that actually allows these vigils to happen. It's something I don't really talk about much, so I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, but I have a lot of friends and a lot of family behind the scenes that put a lot of time and trust and effort essentially into allowing these vigils to happen. So I am most grateful directly for those people that support me in my personal life to be able to come out here on Wednesday nights until 1 o'clock in the morning. So you can find me at Andrew Zigman on Twitter. You can follow us on YouTube, ActionForAssange, and also on Twitter at Action_for_Assange. Our account is shadow banned, so you may just have to search by Action for Assange and click search now instead of actually seeing our icon. So some people do run into that. Yeah, that's something we actually found out at the Chicago show with Misty.
How did I? Okay.
Yeah, she had showed us when we were there that when you actually searched for us, it didn't come up with an icon. It came up with a little bubble unless you were already following us. Like it just had this search button you had to hit to get there. But either way, I'm thankful for everything that happens to make this happen.
Wow. I'm definitely thankful for my family. Even when I have to mute the show and yell at my children because they're trying to kill each other, bring them away. You know, there's they put up with me screaming at a camera, not just here, but when I live stream from the house on Slow News Day, which if you don't know, I host a show called Slow News Day here on the YouTubes. My baseline material comes from independent media. It does not come from corporate media. I don't just sit there and wag my finger at you know, neoliberal talking heads and that's the whole fucking thing. I also interview the people that create the media that I source frequently on my show. I'm incredibly thankful for the opportunity to do these. I guess just from a selfish personal perspective, not because of the subject matter that we're covering. But in a sick way, I'm grateful that most media sucks so bad that there's a lane for people like my wonderful co-host. And especially the way that, like, you know, Taylor's got to run with the 1vs5i campaign, and Christy as Unity for J US spokeswoman. Like, this is a crazy fucking timeline, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like we live in a fucking cartoon. We do where you know, 4 people with other shit going on because of, you know, the, I don't want to say limited because it was superior to a ridiculous amount of people on the planet, but because of the relative exposure that they had to something like WikiLeaks or familiarity with more of the accuracy of what was happening to Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, found a way to be able to express that on the goddamn internet. Like that's a weird timeline. It is. But I love you all. I'm incredibly thankful for the audience that I have at Slow Noon Day. I am really, really thankful for the people that take part in these vigils with us. You guys are incredible. Happy Native Genocide Day. And yeah, good luck to us all.